It was an ordinary afternoon at the high-end restaurant, a place known for its quiet elegance and soft music that filled the air. The kind of restaurant where people came not just to eat, but to meet, discuss, and make decisions that could change lives. Among the waitstaff, one young waitress moved gracefully from table to table, balancing trays and answering polite questions with a calm smile. She had been working here for several years and knew the regulars, the slow days and the busy nights. She liked the rhythm of her work, the little details that made every table different. She had no idea that today would be unlike any other, that something extraordinary was about to happen, something that would change her life and the life of someone else in ways she could not imagine. The restaurant was filled with the gentle hum of conversation, the clinking of cutlery, and the soft aroma of coffee and freshly baked bread. Most of the guests were absorbed in their own world, talking quietly, scrolling through their phones, or simply enjoying a moment of calm. But then, the doors opened, and in walked a group of men who immediately drew attention without even trying. Their presence had a weight to it, an unspoken authority. One of them, taller and dressed in a traditional robe, carried himself with quiet confidence. He was calm, composed, and yet there was something in the way he looked around that showed he was always aware, always calculating. The young waitress noticed him right away, though she did not know who he was. Most people would not have noticed anything unusual, but she had a habit of observing carefully. She noticed the way he adjusted his robe, the slight furrow in his brow, and the way he kept checking the papers in his hand. He looked like someone who had a lot at stake. He was not here for casual conversation or a leisurely meal. She could feel it in the air, a tension that the other diners did not seem to see. As she approached the table to take their order, she could hear fragments of a conversation. The men were speaking in Arabic, a language she understood perfectly. She had learned it from her family and used it regularly at home, but hearing it spoken in a restaurant setting, in such a serious tone, made her pause. They were discussing numbers, contracts, and deals, and something about the way they spoke made her heart skip a beat. It sounded urgent, tense, and not entirely honest. She could not make out every word, but she understood enough to know that this was not a simple business discussion. The man who seemed to be in charge, the tall one in the traditional robe, was handing over papers to another man at the table. His expression was calm, almost trusting, but there was a careful calculation in his eyes. He seemed to believe that the men around him were competent, reliable, and honest. But the young waitress felt a chill run down her spine. She had seen enough documents, enough contracts, and enough situations to know when something did not add up. There was a rhythm in their words, a pattern that felt rehearsed, like a story that had been told too many times and was meant to trick someone into believing it. She moved closer, pretending to straighten the tablecloth while keeping a careful eye on the papers. Her hands were steady, but her mind was racing. She had never been in a situation like this before. She was just a waitress, someone whose job was to serve food and drinks, to make sure the guests were comfortable. Yet here she was, hearing something that felt dangerously wrong, something that could affect a life and a fortune. She tried to shake off the fear, telling herself that maybe she was imagining things, that she was reading too much into the words. But the voice in her head, the one that had always guided her instincts, told her otherwise. The sheik, as she would later come to know him, looked up from the papers and smiled politely at the waitress when she approached the table. He asked for a cup of coffee, his voice calm and polite, and she nodded, hiding the tension she felt. She took the order, her mind running through every detail she had overheard. The other men at the table were still speaking quietly, too focused on the documents to notice her. She felt a mixture of fear and responsibility. She could not let this moment pass without saying something, yet she knew that speaking up carried risks. What if she was wrong? What if she embarrassed herself or angered the wrong people? She walked to the coffee machine, her hands working automatically as she prepared the drinks. She kept glancing at the table, listening carefully, and trying to piece together what she had heard. There was a pattern to the conversation, a sequence of words and numbers that did not make sense. She remembered stories she had read about people being tricked into signing documents that seemed legitimate but were actually fraudulent. She thought about how much money could be involved, how devastating it would be if someone lost everything in an instant. Her heart pounded as she realized the seriousness of what she had stumbled upon. As she carried the coffee to the table, she noticed the subtle gestures, the small signs that confirmed her fears. One of the men was overly eager to present the documents, while another seemed nervous, as if trying to hide something. The sheikh, trusting and composed, did not see the warning signs. He smiled politely, thanking her for the coffee, and she set the cup down carefully. Her eyes met his for a brief moment, and she felt a strange connection, an urgent need to protect him without even knowing him personally. She took a deep breath and decided that she could not stay silent. Her instincts told her that if she did not speak, the consequences could be catastrophic. She moved slightly closer, her voice steady but soft, so that only the sheikh could hear. She whispered a single sentence in Arabic, a warning that would change everything. The words were simple but carried weight. She pointed out the inconsistencies in the documents, the parts that did not add up, and the way the other men were presenting the deal. The sheikh looked at her, surprised, and for a moment, the restaurant seemed to fade away. It was just the two of them, connected by understanding and urgency. The other men at the table noticed the change immediately. Their confident expressions faltered, replaced by confusion and irritation. They had assumed that no one around could understand their language, that no one could see through their carefully constructed story. But the waitress had seen it. She had heard it. And now she had spoken up. The sheikh, initially stunned, began to ask questions, seeking clarification and trying to understand the truth. The waitress explained as clearly as she could, her knowledge and intuition guiding her words. She was not an expert in finance or law, but she understood enough to see that this was a trap, a scam designed to deceive and take advantage. Time seemed to slow down as the sheikh read the papers more carefully, following the points she had raised. His expression changed from polite curiosity to concern, and then to a deep, focused realization. He began to ask more questions, and the men who had seemed so confident grew increasingly nervous. The atmosphere at the table shifted, and the once calm restaurant now felt charged with tension. The waitress felt a mix of fear and relief. She had done something brave, something that could have serious consequences, but she had also done the right thing. As the minutes passed, it became clear that the documents were indeed fraudulent. The sheikh had been moments away from making a decision that could have cost him hundreds of millions of dollars. The other men tried to explain, to justify, but their words fell flat. The waitress's warning had been accurate, precise, and timely. She had prevented a disaster, not with wealth or power, but with observation, knowledge, and courage. When the situation finally settled, the sheikh thanked her sincerely. He acknowledged the danger he had been in and the critical role she had played in saving him. The restaurant staff and other guests looked on, unaware of the full story, but the young waitress knew that something extraordinary had happened. She had stepped out of her ordinary life, and in doing so, had touched the life of someone who many people would never have the chance to meet. She felt a sense of pride and awe, realizing that even in the most routine jobs, moments of incredible significance could arise, moments that tested courage, integrity, and human connection. That afternoon ended like many others in the restaurant, with guests leaving and the soft music playing in the background. But for the young waitress, nothing would ever be the same. She had learned that bravery did not always come from grand gestures, that sometimes it came from speaking a simple truth at the right time. She had discovered the power of paying attention, of trusting instincts, and of acting when it mattered most. And as she cleaned tables and prepared for the evening shift, she carried with her the quiet knowledge that she had changed the course of a life, that she had made a difference in a way that was real, profound, and unforgettable. After the initial warning, the waitress returned to her usual tasks, but her mind was far from the usual rhythm of cleaning tables and taking orders. Every few seconds, she found herself glancing at the sheikh's table, making sure everything was proceeding safely. She could see him reading the documents again, his expression shifting from concern to cautious calculation. He was realizing how close he had come to making a huge mistake, and it was because of her that he now had a chance to prevent it. The waitress felt a strange mix of pride and nervousness. She had never imagined that her understanding of Arabic and her attention to detail could have such a significant impact. The sheikh called over one of his assistants, speaking in Arabic with a tone that was both firm and curious. The waitress watched closely, noticing the subtle signs of tension among the other men at the table. They were still trying to maintain their composure, but it was clear that her warning had shaken them. The sheikh seemed to be carefully reviewing the facts, weighing every word, and questioning the reliability of the documents. He occasionally glanced toward the waitress, silently acknowledging her role in uncovering the truth. She tried to appear busy, but she could not hide the satisfaction she felt. She had stepped out of her ordinary routine and had done something important, something that mattered. The men with him, sensing the shift in the atmosphere, started speaking more cautiously. They realized that the sheikh was no longer fully trusting them, and their earlier confidence began to crack. The waitress could hear fragments of their conversation and recognized the nervousness in their voices. They were trying to cover their tracks, to explain away inconsistencies, but it was too late. The sheikh was already questioning their intentions and demanding more clarity. The waitress felt a shiver of apprehension. This was a dangerous moment. Any wrong move could escalate the situation, but she also knew that the truth was on their side. She decided to stay close, ready to assist if needed. She continued to serve other tables, but her attention never left the sheikh's group. She noticed the small details, the way one man fidgeted, the way another avoided eye contact. These subtle behaviors confirmed what she had suspected from the start. Something was not right. She felt a strong sense of responsibility. This was more than just overhearing a suspicious conversation. She had a chance to prevent a major disaster, and she could not afford to be passive. Her heart pounded as she moved about the restaurant, trying to balance her usual work with the urgent situation unfolding before her eyes. Meanwhile, the sheikh had begun to ask more specific questions. He inquired about certain clauses in the documents, seeking clarification on points that the other men could not answer convincingly. The waitress could see the realization forming on his face. He was connecting the dots, understanding the seriousness of the situation, and recognizing that he had almost been misled. It was a delicate moment, one that required careful attention. Any misstep could lead to anger, conflict, or even a loss of trust. The waitress knew she had to remain composed, ready to offer her insight if needed, without overstepping her role. The atmosphere around the table became tense. The other guests in the restaurant seemed oblivious, engrossed in their meals or conversations. But for those at the sheikh's table, every word and gesture carried weight. The men who had tried to scam the sheikh were clearly uncomfortable. Their earlier arrogance had disappeared, replaced by caution and subtle attempts to regain control. The waitress, although not directly involved in the conversation, felt the intensity of the moment. She understood the power dynamics at play and the potential consequences of every action. Her instincts told her that patience and observation were crucial. She could not interfere recklessly, but she also could not stay silent if another warning was needed. As the discussion continued, the sheikh began to make calls to his trusted advisors. He sought verification of the details presented to him, consulting people with expertise in finance and law. The waitress noticed how methodical he was, how carefully he dissected each point, and how he relied on logic and evidence rather than assumptions. Her heart swelled with quiet admiration. She had only spoken a few words, yet they had sparked a chain reaction that now involved careful verification and serious reflection. The waitress realized that courage could take many forms, and sometimes the smallest act, like speaking the truth at the right moment, could set off significant change. The men who had planned the scam began to lose their composure. They attempted to explain away discrepancies, but the sheikh was thorough and persistent. He asked questions that they could not answer, and his confidence grew as he pieced together the truth. The waitress watched closely, noting the subtle changes in body language, the shifts in tone, and the growing tension. She could sense that the situation was reaching a critical point. Every second mattered. She remained vigilant, prepared to step in if her knowledge could help clarify a detail or reinforce the truth. Meanwhile, The Sheikh's demeanor changed from confusion to determination. He began to see clearly how he had been nearly deceived, and he was taking deliberate steps to protect himself and his wealth. The waitress felt a deep sense of responsibility, knowing that her quick observation and timely intervention had provided him with the opportunity to make the right decisions. She continued her work, serving food and drinks, maintaining her composure, but her mind was fully engaged with the events at the table. She felt a profound connection to the unfolding story, as if her presence was part of something much larger than herself. The other men at the table, realizing that their scheme was unraveling, tried to negotiate, to redirect attention, or to downplay the discrepancies. The Sheikh remained steadfast, questioning everything with precision and logic. The waitress recognized the courage required on both sides, the courage to stand firm in truth, and the courage to face the consequences of deception. She felt a renewed respect for the Sheikh, who, despite being a powerful figure, had taken the time to listen, verify, and act wisely. She also felt pride in herself for recognizing the problem and having the bravery to speak up. Hours seemed to pass like minutes. The Sheikh's advisors confirmed what the waitress had suspected all along. The documents were indeed fraudulent, and the men had attempted to mislead him for their gain. The waitress realized that she had played a pivotal role in preventing a potential loss of hundreds of millions of dollars. She had done this not with money, authority, or influence, but with attention, knowledge, and courage. The realization filled her with a mixture of relief, pride, and humility. She had acted in a moment when it mattered most, and her intervention had saved someone from disaster. As the situation began to settle, the Sheikh turned to her, his expression one of gratitude and admiration. He acknowledged her bravery and insight, recognizing that her actions had made a significant difference. The waitress felt a rush of emotions, a blend of humility, pride, and satisfaction. She had stepped beyond her ordinary role and made an extraordinary impact. She understood that life sometimes presented moments that tested courage, honesty, and human connection, and she had risen to the occasion. Her simple act of speaking up had set off a series of events that would be remembered and appreciated by someone she had never expected to influence. The restaurant gradually returned to its normal rhythm. Guests finished their meals, conversations resumed, and the soft music continued to play. Yet for the waitress, the day was no longer ordinary. She had learned that even the smallest voice could have a profound impact, that paying attention and acting with integrity could save someone from great harm. She had discovered the power of courage in everyday life and the importance of speaking the truth when it mattered most. As she cleaned the tables and prepared for the evening, she reflected on the events of the day. She realized that bravery and wisdom could come from the most unexpected places, and that her willingness to act had changed not just the course of a financial deal, but the life of a person she had barely known. She felt a quiet sense of fulfillment, knowing that her instincts, language skills, and courage had all come together to prevent disaster. In that moment, she understood that ordinary people could make extraordinary differences when they trusted themselves, stayed observant, and acted at the right moment. The lesson was simple, but powerful. Sometimes, the courage to speak a few words could alter the course of events, save lives, and change futures. The tension at the Sheikh's table had reached its peak. The other men who had tried to manipulate the deal were now visibly nervous, their confident expressions fading as they realized they were being exposed. The young waitress, still nearby, felt her heart racing. She had never been in a situation like this before, where every word she spoke or noticed could change the outcome of someone's life. She continued to serve the other guests, but her mind was entirely on the unfolding events. She knew she had to remain calm, focused, and ready to step in again if necessary. The Sheikh, having carefully reviewed the documents and spoken to his trusted advisors, began to piece together the truth. He realized that he had almost been misled by a carefully planned scam worth hundreds of millions. His expression, once calm and trusting, now showed a mix of shock and determination. He turned his attention fully to the men who had tried to deceive him, his voice firm and precise. Every question he asked highlighted the discrepancies that the waitress had first noticed. She watched as the men struggled to answer, their earlier arrogance replaced with hesitation and unease. The waitress felt a surge of urgency. She had to make sure her observations were clearly understood. She walked closer to the sheikh, speaking softly in Arabic, her voice steady but filled with quiet authority. She explained the inconsistencies she had noticed, detailing the parts of the documents that did not make sense and the behaviors of the men that had seemed suspicious from the start. Her words were simple but accurate, and she delivered them with the confidence that came from knowing she was right. The sheikh listened intently, his eyes never leaving hers, recognizing the value of her insight. The men at the table tried to respond, attempting to justify their actions and cover up the evidence. But the sheikh was no longer easily fooled. He asked pointed questions, requiring specific answers that revealed the holes in their story. The waitress, observing everything carefully, added clarification when needed, helping to highlight the truth without overstepping her role. She could feel the weight of the situation pressing down on her, but she also felt a deep sense of purpose. Her actions were making a difference, and she could see the direct impact of her courage. As the conversation continued, the sheikh made calls to legal and financial experts he trusted. He wanted to verify the authenticity of the documents and ensure that no part of the deal could harm him. The waitress watched the way he methodically dissected every detail, asking questions that revealed the scam for what it truly was. She felt admiration for his careful approach and was grateful that he had listened to her warning. She realized that her words had set in motion a chain of events that allowed the truth to emerge fully. The atmosphere at the table grew more intense. The men who had tried to commit the scam became increasingly flustered, their attempts to maintain composure failing. The sheikh's questions exposed their lies and inconsistencies, and the waitress could see the fear growing in their eyes. She remained calm, quietly observing and providing input only when necessary. Her presence had shifted the balance of power in the room, turning what could have been a disastrous situation into one where truth and careful observation prevailed. The sheikh began to act decisively. He instructed his advisors to halt any further actions related to the deal until every detail was verified. He questioned every clause, every signature, and every claim, leaving no room for deception. The waitress, standing nearby, felt a sense of relief. She had never imagined that her knowledge and attentiveness could play such a critical role in protecting someone from massive financial loss. She continued to serve other guests, but she kept one eye on the unfolding events, ready to offer further insight if required. As the minutes passed, it became clear that the documents were indeed fraudulent. The other men's plans had been meticulously designed, but they had not accounted for the keen observation and quick thinking of the waitress. She had noticed what they had assumed would go unseen, and her intervention had prevented a catastrophe. The sheikh, now fully aware of the danger, took steps to ensure that the scammers could not proceed. His trust in the waitress grew, and he acknowledged, silently and with respect, that her actions had been instrumental. The young waitress felt a mix of emotions. Relief, pride, and a quiet sense of empowerment washed over her. She had done something extraordinary without seeking attention or reward. She had acted because it was the right thing to do, and in doing so, she had saved someone from a potentially devastating loss. She understood that ordinary people could influence extraordinary events when they paid attention, spoke up, and trusted their instincts. Her courage, combined with her knowledge and observation, had turned a dangerous situation into a moment of triumph for truth. The sheikh, having secured the verification of all documents and confirmed the fraud, turned to the waitress with genuine gratitude. He acknowledged her bravery, recognizing that she had acted selflessly and with remarkable insight. The men who had attempted the scam were now left exposed, their plans dismantled by the simple but powerful actions of one attentive individual. The waitress felt a deep sense of satisfaction, knowing that her instincts and courage had made a tangible difference in the real world. In the moments that followed, the restaurant returned to its usual rhythm. Guests continued to enjoy their meals, unaware of the dramatic events that had just taken place. The waitress continued her duties, carrying plates and refilling glasses, but she did so with a new sense of confidence and purpose. She had experienced something rare and profound, a moment where ordinary life intersected with extraordinary events, and she had risen to the occasion. The sheikh remained at the table, quietly reviewing the now confirmed documents and speaking with his advisors. The waitress observed from a distance, feeling a mix of humility and pride. She had acted without expectation of recognition, yet her actions had had a life-altering impact. She understood that true courage was often quiet, measured, and rooted in a sense of responsibility. Her intervention had prevented a disaster worth hundreds of millions, and she had done so with nothing more than observation, knowledge, and the courage to speak. As the day turned into evening, the waitress reflected on the lessons she had learned. She realized that paying attention to small details, trusting one's instincts, and having the courage to act could change the course of events in unimaginable ways. She had discovered that even someone in a seemingly ordinary position could wield extraordinary influence when faced with a moment of truth. Her life would never be the same, and neither would the life of the sheikh, who had been saved from a carefully orchestrated scam by her timely and decisive action. By the end of her shift, the waitress felt a deep sense of fulfillment. She had seen firsthand how honesty, awareness, and courage could prevent disaster and create opportunities for growth and learning. She knew that she had been part of something much larger than herself, a real-life story of intervention, integrity, and the power of speaking the truth at the right moment. As she left the restaurant, she carried with her the quiet pride of knowing that her actions had made a difference, that she had protected someone from harm, and that even ordinary people could have extraordinary impact when they trusted their instincts and acted with courage. The restaurant had settled into a quieter rhythm after the tension-filled confrontation, but for the waitress, the day was far from over. She continued serving tables, her movements calm and practiced, yet her mind kept returning to the sheikh and the documents that had almost caused him a devastating loss. She could still see the expressions on the men's faces, the panic and frustration as their deception unraveled. Every detail she remembered reinforced the importance of her actions, and she felt both relief and a deep sense of responsibility. She had spoken up at the right time, and now she watched as the consequences of her words unfolded. The sheikh had called in his most trusted advisors to examine every aspect of the documents. Legal experts, financial consultants, and auditors began reviewing the papers, verifying signatures, cross-checking information, and confirming the authenticity of each statement. The waitress, though not part of the official proceedings, remained close enough to observe the careful scrutiny taking place. She watched the sheikh engage in conversation with his advisors, asking questions with precision and thoughtfulness. It was clear that he was determined to leave nothing to chance, and she felt a quiet admiration for his diligence and thoroughness. As the hours passed, the waitress noticed the growing tension among the men who had attempted the scam. Their confidence had completely disappeared, replaced by nervous glances, quiet mutters, and the occasional defensive gesture. They had assumed that no one in the restaurant would notice the inconsistencies, that their carefully constructed plan would succeed without interruption. But the waitress had seen through it all, and her timely intervention had changed everything. The truth was coming to light, and the scammers were powerless to stop it. The sheikh's advisors confirmed the fraudulent nature of the documents. They identified subtle manipulations, hidden clauses, and falsified details that had been designed to mislead. The waitress had been right to warn him, and her observation had been crucial in alerting him before any irreversible decisions were made. The sheikh looked at her with gratitude, a silent acknowledgement that her courage and knowledge had been instrumental. She felt a wave of humility and pride at the same time, understanding the profound impact a single person's awareness and bravery could have on the course of events. With the verification complete, the sheikh took decisive action. He ensured that any agreements associated with the documents were suspended immediately. He instructed his team to secure all communications and to take legal steps to prevent the scammers from profiting from their deceit. The men who had attempted the fraud were confronted and questioned, their previous arrogance replaced by fear and unease. The waitress observed the scene unfold, realizing how her words had initiated a chain reaction that safeguarded not only wealth but also reputation and integrity. It was remarkable to see how a simple act of honesty could ripple outward and influence so many aspects of life. The sheikh, impressed by the clarity and accuracy of her insight, asked to speak to her directly. The waitress, surprised but composed, approached the table. He expressed his sincere thanks, acknowledging the courage it took for her to speak up. He explained how close he had been to falling into a trap worth hundreds of millions and that without her intervention, the outcome could have been catastrophic. The waitress listened quietly, feeling a mix of humility and pride. She had never sought recognition, yet the sincerity of his gratitude filled her with a sense of purpose and fulfillment. As the conversation continued, the sheikh shared details about how carefully the scammers had planned their scheme. He explained that they had attempted to create a convincing illusion of legitimacy, relying on the assumption that no one around could understand or notice the discrepancies. The waitress's fluency in Arabic and her attention to detail had made all the difference. She realized that her ordinary skills, applied at the right moment, had prevented a disaster of unimaginable scale. It was a powerful lesson in the importance of observation, awareness, and the willingness to act when something felt wrong. The other guests in the restaurant remained largely unaware of the extraordinary events taking place. They enjoyed their meals, chatted quietly, and went about their own lives, oblivious to the fact that a massive financial fraud had been averted in their midst. The waitress continued her duties with professionalism, but she carried with her the knowledge that her actions had saved someone from immense harm. It was a quiet, personal victory, one that would stay with her forever. She understood that ordinary moments could suddenly become extraordinary when courage and insight intersected with opportunity. As the hours passed, the scammers were escorted out of the restaurant, their attempts to manipulate the sheikh completely exposed. The atmosphere at the table lightened, replaced by relief and a sense of accomplishment. The sheikh, now confident that he had avoided a potentially catastrophic loss, expressed his gratitude once again to the waitress. He commended her for her bravery, insight, and willingness to speak up. Her quiet determination and keen observation had not only saved him financially but had also protected him from reputational damage and the stress of betrayal. She felt a profound sense of fulfillment, knowing that she had made a real and meaningful difference. The waitress continued her work, serving remaining tables and managing the restaurant's evening flow. She reflected on the events of the day, understanding that courage often comes in unexpected forms. She had not been a lawyer, an advisor, or a financial expert. She had simply paid attention, recognized the danger, and acted with honesty and clarity. Her actions had demonstrated the power of ordinary people to influence extraordinary outcomes when they trusted their instincts and acted with integrity. She felt a renewed sense of confidence in her own abilities and a deeper appreciation for the impact that one person can have on the lives of others. As the evening progressed, the sheikh invited the waitress to join him briefly, not out of formality, but out of genuine respect. He spoke to her about the importance of vigilance, honesty, and courage. He explained that people often underestimate the value of paying attention to small details and speaking up when something seems wrong. Her actions had reminded him of the importance of listening to voices that are often overlooked. The waitress felt honored, not because of the recognition itself, but because her actions had been understood, valued, and had truly mattered. By the end of her shift, the restaurant had returned to its calm, evening atmosphere. Guests finished their meals and departed, unaware of the incredible events that had transpired earlier. The waitress cleaned the tables, collected dishes, and prepared for closing, reflecting on the day's lessons. She realized that life sometimes presents opportunities to make a difference in ways that are unexpected and profound. Her courage and attention to detail had prevented a loss of hundreds of millions and had saved the sheikh from a potentially life-altering mistake. She had witnessed firsthand how truth, observation, and bravery could intersect to create meaningful change. The waitress left the restaurant that night with a deep sense of fulfillment. She understood that her actions had proven the importance of listening, observing, and speaking the truth when it matters most. She had discovered that ordinary people can have extraordinary impact when they trust their instincts and act with integrity. The events of the day had taught her that bravery does not always come in grand gestures. Sometimes it comes in quiet, thoughtful actions taken at the right moment. She knew that her life would never be the same, and she also knew that the Sheikh's life had been profoundly affected by her intervention. It was a day that would stay with her forever, a story of courage, truth, and the power of paying attention. By the time the evening had settled, the events of the day had left a lasting impact on everyone involved. The restaurant had returned to its usual rhythm, with the soft music in the background and diners enjoying their meals, unaware of the extraordinary events that had unfolded just hours before. The young waitress continued her work, moving from table to table, serving dishes and drinks, yet her mind lingered on the Sheikh and the series of events that had changed the course of the day. She had never imagined that her ordinary skills, her fluency in Arabic and her attentiveness, could have such a profound effect on someone's life. The Sheikh, now confident that he had avoided a massive financial loss, sat quietly at his table, reflecting on the day's events. He had been moments away from falling into a carefully planned scam worth hundreds of millions. And yet, because of the courage and insight of a single waitress, he had been saved. He looked around the restaurant and finally noticed her again, moving gracefully among the tables. He motioned for her to come closer, not in formality, but in genuine respect and appreciation. She approached, slightly hesitant but composed, feeling the weight of the moment and the sincerity in his gaze. He spoke to her quietly, expressing deep gratitude for her bravery and quick thinking. He acknowledged that she had seen what many others could not, had understood the danger, and had acted without hesitation. The words filled her with a mix of pride, humility, and a profound sense of accomplishment. She realized that her actions had not only prevented a massive financial loss, but had also preserved the Sheikh's trust in those around him and saved him from potential embarrassment or worse. It was a moment that would remain etched in both their memories forever. The Sheikh shared more details about how the scammers had intended to mislead him. He explained the lengths they had gone to, how carefully they had crafted documents and narratives that seemed convincing. They had assumed that no one in the restaurant would understand their plans, that the young waitress would remain just another face in the crowd. But she had noticed inconsistencies, understood subtle clues, and had spoken up at the critical moment. Her intervention had been the turning point. She realized that ordinary people often underestimate the power of observation and the courage to act, and yet, even small actions can prevent disasters on unimaginable scales. As the evening went on, the Sheikh continued to consult with his advisors, confirming that every part of the fraudulent plan had been uncovered. The scammers had been exposed and would face consequences for their actions. The young waitress watched from a distance, quietly absorbing the impact of what had occurred. Her initial warning had set off a chain reaction that ensured justice and safeguarded both money and reputation. She understood the value of her vigilance and the courage it took to speak, knowing that ordinary people could make extraordinary differences when they trusted their instincts. After the meeting with his advisors, the Sheikh called the waitress over once more. This time it was to express not just gratitude, but admiration. He told her that the world often overlooks small voices, those who work quietly behind the scenes, yet they often see what others miss. Her attentiveness, knowledge of the language, and willingness to act had changed the course of his day, and perhaps even the course of his future. He assured her that her actions would not be forgotten, and he would ensure that her courage and insight were recognized. The waitress listened, feeling a deep sense of pride and satisfaction, yet remaining humble. She had acted out of instinct and integrity, and now she saw the profound impact of her choices. The restaurant gradually emptied, and the bustle of the day gave way to a quieter, more reflective atmosphere. The young waitress continued her duties, cleaning tables and managing the remaining guests, but she carried with her a renewed sense of purpose. She reflected on the extraordinary series of events, understanding that life often presents opportunities to make a difference when least expected. Her actions had demonstrated that paying attention, speaking the truth, and acting with courage could prevent disaster and protect those around us. She felt a deep sense of fulfillment, knowing that her ordinary role had intersected with extraordinary circumstances in a meaningful way. The Sheikh, now confident that all risks had been mitigated, prepared to leave the restaurant. He thanked the waitress once more, this time publicly, acknowledging her bravery in front of his advisors. Her colleagues and other guests were surprised but impressed, realizing that she had done something remarkable. The recognition was not something she had sought, but it filled her with quiet pride. She had acted from principle, not expectation, and yet her actions had been noticed and appreciated in a profound way. It was a reminder that integrity and courage are always valuable, even when the results are not immediately visible. As the sheikh departed, he left the waitress with words of encouragement and appreciation. He told her that she had a rare quality, the ability to act decisively and wisely when others might hesitate. Her alertness and willingness to speak up had not only saved him from financial disaster, but had also set an example of courage and honesty. The waitress felt a deep sense of satisfaction, knowing that she had been a key part of preventing a major fraud. She realized that her actions could inspire others to pay attention, trust their instincts, and speak the truth when it matters most. The night continued, and the restaurant closed for the evening. The young waitress finally took a moment to sit, reflecting on the extraordinary day she had experienced. She understood that life often presents challenges that test courage, integrity, and wisdom. She had learned that even ordinary individuals could make a profound difference when they were observant, attentive, and willing to act in the moment of truth. Her bravery and insight had saved a powerful individual from a carefully orchestrated scam, and she knew that her actions would leave a lasting impact. In the days that followed, news of the incident quietly spread within the restaurant's community. The young waitress was commended by her managers and colleagues, not only for her professionalism but for her extraordinary awareness and courage. She had proven that being observant and acting with integrity could have far-reaching consequences. The sheikh, too, ensured that her role in preventing the scam was recognized, sharing the story with his trusted circle and highlighting her bravery and wisdom. It was a testament to the fact that ordinary people could play extraordinary roles when they trusted themselves and acted with courage. The young waitress continued her work, but she did so with a renewed sense of confidence and purpose. She carried the knowledge that her actions had real impact, that speaking up at the right moment could prevent disaster and change lives. She realized that every moment, no matter how small it seemed, had the potential to be significant. The events of that day had reinforced the value of integrity, vigilance, and courage. She understood that ordinary acts of attentiveness and honesty could ripple outward, creating extraordinary outcomes for those around her. In the quiet moments after her shift, the waitress reflected on what had happened and the lessons she had learned. She recognized that bravery is often subtle and measured, that ordinary people can become heroes through awareness, honesty, and decisive action. She had prevented a loss of hundreds of millions and saved the sheikh from deception, not through wealth, power, or influence, but through courage, language skills, and a willingness to speak the truth. The experience left her with a profound sense of fulfillment and a deeper understanding of the impact one individual could have on the lives of others. As she left the restaurant that night, the young waitress felt a quiet pride and a sense of purpose. She had been part of something extraordinary, an event that demonstrated the power of observation, integrity, and courage. She understood that life often places opportunities in unexpected places, and that ordinary people can achieve extraordinary outcomes when they act with awareness and conviction. The day had changed her, not only in terms of recognition but in how she viewed her own abilities and the potential of ordinary actions to create extraordinary results. The story of that day would stay with her forever. She had seen firsthand how attentiveness, honesty, and courage could prevent disaster and create positive outcomes in the lives of others. She had learned that ordinary people, when they trust their instincts and act at the right moment, can have a profound impact on the world around them. The events had proven that courage and integrity, even in the smallest acts, are powerful forces. The young waitress walked home that night with a renewed belief in herself, in the value of speaking the truth, and in the extraordinary potential of ordinary actions to change lives for the better.